Sanditon by Jane Austen. A gentleman and lady travelling from Tunbridge towards that part of the Sussex coast which lies between Hastings and Eastbourne, being induced by business to quit the high road and attempt a very rough lane, were overturned in toiling up its long ascent, half rock, half sand. The accident happened just before the only gentleman's house near the lane, a house which their driver, on first being required to take that direction, had conceived to be necessarily their object, and had with most unwilling looks been constrained to pass by. He had grumbled and shaken his shoulders so much indeed, and pitted and cut his horses so sharply that he might have been open to the suspicion of overturning them on purpose, especially as the carriage was not his master's own. If the road had not indisputably become considerably worse than before, as soon as the premises of the said house was left behind, expressing with a most intelligent portentous countenance that beyond it no wheels but cart-wheels could safely proceed. The severity of the fall was broken by their slow pace and the narrowness of the lane, and the gentleman, having scrambled out and helped his companion, by neither of them at first felt more than shaken or bruised. But the gentleman had in the course of the extrication sprained his foot, and soon become insensible of it, was obliged in a few moments to cut short both his remonstrance to the driver and his congratulations to his wife and himself, and sit down on the bank, unable to stand. "There is something wrong here," said he, putting his hand to his ankle. "But never mind, my dear," looking up at her with a smile. "It could not have happened, you know, in a better place. Good out of evil. The very thing perhaps to be wished for. We shall soon get relief. There, I fancy, lies my cure." Pointing to the neat-looking end of a cottage, which was seen romantically situated among wood on a high eminence at some little distance. "Does not that promise to be the very place?" His wife fervently hoped it was, but stood terrified and anxious, neither able to do or suggest anything, and receiving her first real comfort from the sight of several persons now coming to their assistance. The accident had been discerned from a hayfield adjoining the house they had passed, and the persons who approached were a well-looking, hale, gentleman-like man of middle age, the proprietor of the place, who happened to be among his haymakers at the time, and 3 or 4 of the ablest of them summoned to attend their master, to say nothing of all the rest of the field, men, women, and children, not very far off. Mr. Hayward, such was the name of the said proprietor, advanced with a very civil salutation, much concerned for the accident, some surprise at anybody's attempting that road in a carriage, and ready offers of assistance. His courtesies were received with good breeding and gratitude, and while 1 or 2 of the men lent their help to the driver in getting the carriage upright again, the traveller said, "You are extremely obliging, sir, and I take you at your word. The injury to my leg is, I dare say, very trifling, but it is always best in these cases to have a surgeon's opinion without loss of time. And as the road does not seem at present in a favourable state for my getting up to his house myself, I will thank you to send off one of these good people for the surgeon." "The surgeon, sir?" replied Mr. Hayward. "I'm afraid you will find no surgeon at hand here, but I dare say we shall do very well without him." "Nay, sir, If he is not in the way, his partner will do just as well, or rather better. I would rather see his partner indeed. I would prefer the attendance of his partner. One of these good people can be with him in 3 minutes, I am sure. I need not ask whether I see the houses," looking towards the cottage, "for, excepting your own, I have passed none in this place which can be the abode of a gentleman." Mr. Hayward looked very much astonished, and replied, "What, sir, are you expecting to find a surgeon in that cottage? We have neither surgeon nor partner in this parish, I assure you." "Excuse me, sir," replied the other, "I am sorry to have the appearance of contradicting you, but though from the extent of the parish or some other cause you may not be aware of the fact, stay, can I be mistaken in this place? Is not this Willingdon?" "Yes, sir, this is certainly Willingdon." "Then, sir, I can bring proof of your having a surgeon in the parish, whether you may know it or not. Here, sir," taking out his pocket-book. "If you will do me the favour of casting your eye over these advertisements, which I cut out myself from the Morning Post and the Kentish Gazette, only yesterday morning in London, I think, you will be convinced that I am not speaking at random. You will find it an advertisement, sir, of the dissolution of a partnership in the medical line in your own parish. Extensive business, undeniable character, respectable references, wishing to form a separate establishment. You will find it at full length, sir," offering him the 2 little oblong extracts. "Sir," said Mr. Hayward with a good-humoured smile, "if you were to show me all the newspapers that are printed in 1 week throughout the kingdom, you would not persuade me of there being a surgeon in Willingdon. For I have lived here ever since I was born, man and boy, 57 years. I think I must have known of such a person, at least I may venture to say he has not much business. To be sure, if gentlemen were to be often attempting this lane in post-chaises, it might not be a bad speculation for a surgeon to get a house at the top of the hill. But as to that cottage, I can assure you, sir, that it is in fact, in spite of its spruce air at this distance, as indifferent a double tenement as any in the parish, and that my shepherd lives at one, and 3 old women at the other." He took the pieces of paper as he spoke, and having looked them over, added, "I believe I can explain it, sir. Your mistake is in the place. There are 2 Willingdons in this country, and your advertisement refers to the other, which is Great Willingdon, or Willingdon Abbots, and lies 7 miles off on the side of Battle, quite down in the Weald, and we, sir," speaking rather proudly, "are not in the Weald." "Not down in the Weald, I am sure, sir," replied the traveller pleasantly. "It took us half an hour to climb your hill. Well, sir, I dare say it is as you say, and I have made an abominably stupid blunder. All done in the moment. The advertisements did not catch my eye till the last half hour of our being in town, when everything is in a hurry and confusion which always attend a short stay there. One is never able to complete anything in the way of business, you know, till the carriage is at the door. And accordingly, satisfying myself with a brief inquiry, and finding we were actually to pass within a mile of Willingdon, I sought no farther. My dear," to his wife, "I am very sorry to have brought you into this scrape. But do not be alarmed about my leg. It gives me no pain while I am quiet. And as soon as these good people have succeeded in setting the carriage to the rights and turning the horses round, the best thing we can do will be to measure back our steps into the turnpike road and proceed to Hailsham, and so home, without attempting any farther. 2 hours take us home from Hailsham, and when once at home we have our remedy at hand, you know. A little of our own bracing air will soon set me on my feet again. Depend upon it, my dear, it is exactly a case for the sea. Saline air Immersion will be the very thing. My sensations tell me so already." In a most friendly manner, Mr. Hayward were here interposed, entreating them not to think of proceeding till the ankle had been examined, and some refreshment taken, and very cordially presenting them to make use of his house for both purposes. "We are always stocked," he said, "with all the common remedies for sprains and bruises," he said, "and I will answer for the pleasure it will give my wife and daughters to be of service to you and this lady in every way in their power. A twinge or two in trying to move his foot disposed the traveller to think rather more, as he had done at first, of the benefit of immediate assistance. Consulting his wife in the few words of, "Oh, well, my dear, I believe it will be better for us," turned again to Mr. Hayward and said, "Before we accept your hospitality, sir, and in order to do away with any unfavourable impression which the sort of wild goose chase you find me in may have given rise to, allow me to tell you who we are. My name is Parker, a Mr. Parker of Sanditon, and this lady, my wife, a Mrs. Parker. We are on our road home from London. My name, perhaps, though I am of no means the first of my family, holding landed property in the parish of Sanditon, may be unknown at this distance from the coast. But Sanditon itself, everybody has heard of Sanditon, the favourite, for a young and rising bathing place, certainly the favourite spot of all that are to be found along the coast of Sussex. The most favoured by nature, and promising to be the most chosen by man." "Yes, I have heard of Sanditon," replied Mr. Hayward. "Every 5 years one hears of some new place or other starting up by the sea and growing the fashion. How they can half of them be filled is the wonder. Where people can be found with money or time to go to them. Bad places, bad things for a country, sure to raise the price of provisions and make the poor good for nothing, as I dare say you find, sir." "Not at all, not at all," cried Mr. Parker eagerly. "Quite the contrary, I assure you. A common idea, but a mistaken one. It may apply to your large overgrown places like Brighton or Worthing or Eastbourne, but not a small village like Sanditon, precluded by its size from experiencing any of the evils of civilization, while the growth of the place, the buildings, the nursery grounds, the demand for everything, and the sure resort of the very best company, whose regular, steady, private families of thorough gentility and character, though are a blessing everywhere, excited the industry of the poor, and diffuse comfort and improvement among them of every sort. No, sir, I assure you, Sanditon is not a place. I do not mean to take exception to any place in particular, sir," answered Mr. Hayward. "I only think our coast is too full of them altogether. But had we not better try to get you our coast too full?" repeated Mr. Parker. "On that point perhaps we may not totally disagree. At least there are enough. Our coast is abundant enough. It demands no more. Everybody's taste and everybody's finances may be suited, and those good people who are trying to add to the number are, in my opinion, excessively absurd, and must soon find themselves the dupes of their most fallacious calculations. Such a place as Sanditon, sir, I may say was called for. Nature had marked it out, had spoken in most intelligible characters. The finest, purest sea breeze on the coast, acknowledged to be so, excellent bathing, fine hard sand, that's my dog growling. deep water 10 yards from the shore, no mud, no weeds, no slimy rocks. Never was there a place more palpably designed by nature for the resort of the invalid, or shall we say invalid. The very spot which thousands seem to need of, the most desirable distance from London, one complete measured mile nearer than Eastbourne. Only conceive, sir, the advantage of saving a whole mile in a journey. But Brinshaw, sir, which I dare say you have in your eye, the attempts of 2 or 3 speculating people about Brinshaw this last year to raise that paltry hamlet, lying as it does between a stagnant marsh, a bleak moor, and a constant efflusia of ridge of putrefying seaweed, can end in nothing but their own disappointment. What in the name of common sense is to recommend a Brinshaw? A most insalubrious air, roads proverbially detestable, water brackish beyond example, impossible to get a good dish of tea within 3 miles of the place, and as for the soil, it is so cold and ungrateful that it can hardly be made to yield a cabbage. Depend upon it, sir, that this is a faithful description of Brinshaw, not in the smallest degree exaggerated. And if you have heard it differently spoke of, sir, I never heard it spoken of in my life before, said Mr. Hayward. I did not know there was such a place in the world. You did not? There, my dear, turning with exultation to his wife, you see how it is. So much for the celebrity of Brinshaw. This gentleman did not know there was such a place in the world. Why, in truth, sir, I fancy you may apply to Brinshaw that line of the poet Cowper in his description of the religious cottager, as opposed to Voltaire. She never heard of half a mile from home. With all my heart, sir, apply any verses you like to it, but I want to see something applied to your leg, and I am sure by your lady's countenance that she is quite of my opinion, and thinks it a pity to lose any more time. And here come my girls to speak for themselves, and their mother. 2 or 3 gentle-looking young women, followed by as many maid-servants, were now seen issuing from the house. I began to wonder the bustle should not have reached them. A thing of this kind soon makes a stir in a lonely place like ours. Now, sir, let us see how you can best be conveyed into the house. The young ladies approached and said everything that was proper to recommend their father's offers, and in an unaffected manner calculated to make the strangers easy. And as Mrs. Parker was exceedingly anxious for relief, and her husband by this time much less disposed for it, a very few civil scruples were enough, especially as the carriage, being now set up, was discovered to have received such injury on the fallen side as to be unfit for present use. Mr. Parker was therefore carried into the house, and his carriage wheeled off to a vacant barn. End of chapter 1.